clicker, or should I just use the button? I'm not going to go anywhere, am I? Hi, my name's Stephen Millard from Accomplished. We are a quite unique animal, I think, in the world of incubators and accelerators, and there are a lot of these emerging around the world, and that we are entirely focused on technology companies, B2B technology companies selling into the retail space. We are also a startup as well, constantly learning and evolving our business and adapting to the things that we learn as we're going out into the market. So I feel a real affinity to the companies that we work with. Over the last just the three things, what we do for the companies we work with, one of three very simple things on the face of it. One, we help early stage technology companies who are trying to sell into the retail space to build a product that a retailer will buy. And that sounds so trite, but it's really the fundamental essence of the starting point of the journey of any startup. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, but I'm solving a valuable problem that somebody's going to pay me money to address, and figuring out how to do that really well to create a solution that we can then replicate to a larger market and scale the shit out of it. That's what a startup wants to do. So the second thing we do is then figure out how to help them grow. And the learning for me as I've been on this journey is that actually it's quite tough to make money out of startups. Let's be honest, that's the whole point. They start for cash. So what we also do is help them raise capital. Over the last 12 months, we've probably been introduced to 300 plus early stage technology companies. A lot in the UK, a lot from Northern Europe, increasing amounts from Asia and from all over different marketplaces. Many of them looking to come to the UK because this is such a vibrant space. We've probably worked with 20 companies over the last 12 months to help them through that market validation and growth, and by the end of this year we'll have, fingers crossed, touch wood, helped about 10 of those close investment and one of them get acquired by a third party. So we're seeing a lot of stuff. I don't know yet that I know enough about how to choose the ones that are going to be really successful, but hopefully in 3 or 4 years' time. And what we're doing is we're building a portfolio of really interesting complementary technology companies, and I think it's one of the critical values we can bring to the marketplace and to the retailers is that there are so many opportunities within complementary technology startups to collaborate, to work together to deliver bigger and better solutions. It is a very hot space, and there are many people talking about the market in very exciting ways, but there are also some very fundamental challenges within that market too. Some real disconnects, I think, between the world of the startup and the world of the retailer or the big brand. I was at Retail Week's conference yesterday and listening to Mike McNamara, who's the CIO at Tesco, talking about the fact that virtually everything good they're doing as a retailer is built on technology. And then a couple of startups whispering in my ear, these are real bastards to work with. And it's incredibly difficult to get money out of them. And yes, we go into their incubators, and apologies if there is someone from Tesco here, I don't think there was. We go into their incubators and they're great and they do give us really good exposure, but typically then they're going off and doing this themselves. We are creating, I think, a mutually dependent ecosystem. And we need really good, solid, honest relationships between the retailers and the brands and the startups, because honestly I think you're dependent upon each other. The retail world is being reinvented. It isn't just technology, it's actually a much bigger issues. We're seeing billions of people around the world coming out of poverty, and we're seeing people moving from the countryside to the cities, and we're seeing whole generations of consumers who've grown up entirely digital. It was a fascinating presentation at the Retail Week conference yesterday from Mintel, talking about the millennials, the way they behave, the way they buy, the way they consume technology. If anybody's got teenage children, you know just how different their consumer behavior is going to be over the next 5 to 10 years. No industry, arguably, is going to be affected as strongly by technology, economic shifts, and changing socio-demographic behaviour than the retail space. And that is going to create, I think, incredible opportunity. That transformation of an outdated industry model, and one could argue that retail, while they've been consumers of tech since for the last 100 years, it's going to accelerate even faster in the coming 3 to 4 years than even we've seen in the last 20 since the first online retail store. That transformation of the outdated model is creating a real hotbed of retail innovation and increased speculation. And I'm not talking about speculation purely as an investor putting money into a business, but the startups themselves risking their livelihoods, putting their reputations on the line to solve very important problems. And I really feel very strongly that the retailers and brand are as much dependent upon the startups for that culture of innovation as the startups are on the retailers for the money that they can bring to them. And so, that's a critical issue that we're figuring out how to address. To my mind, there is no doubt that digital innovation is absolutely critical in the transformation of the retail industry. This is some research we did about 10 months ago. We researched around about 100 decision makers, multi-channel directors or e-com directors within UK retailers, all trading over 10 million online. And what's more surprising than the 85% down here who say that digital innovation is critical to the success of my business is these guys up here who disagree strongly. Well, I think we can probably hazard a guess what's going to happen to some of those businesses, and the types of organisations who've kept their heads in the sand about the transformation that's coming and the way they need to change their businesses are being disrupted at a very serious level. So that, to me, was very reassuring, but also concerning. What we also explored was in the research that we did, was the relationship within brands and retailers between spend on innovation and company success. And we saw a very clear linkage between the proportion of IT budget I'm spending on innovation related to company performance. What's most interesting, so if you look at the difference between I'm spending less than 30% of my IT budget on innovation versus I'm spending greater than 60% of my IT budget on innovation, the difference in the growth numbers that those companies were reporting. And what's most interesting there as well is, to be honest, it's not about in-store, it's not about online, it's not about mobile. To be honest, the discussions on my next slide about multi-channel are, so passé, because this is just the way it is. And this was 10 months ago, and the retailers we were looking at were allocating 17% of the revenues they were seeing to mobile. I'd argue if we did that again today, it would be significantly higher for many retailers and many brands. The last purchase you made online, how many of you did that on a mobile phone? Complete transactions. How many people have purchased a flight on their mobile phone? Downloaded a boarding pass and had used the scanner. It's obvious, isn't it? I mean, the implications are significant. So don't think kind of insert buzzword channel anymore. It's just a new reality of retail, and this is what we're seeing, and the predictions in terms of revenue growth that these retailers are showing are kind of bearing that out. The good news is we're really, really good at this stuff. In the UK, the average consumer spends double per capita online the next nearest economy. And the next nearest economy is South Korea. That doesn't make us the biggest digital retail marketplace, but it by far and away makes us the most interesting, the most attractive, yes, the most competitive. And there are many, this was another piece of the research we did where it hasn't rendered terribly well, and where we looked at the kind of issues that have led to this incredible adoption of online retail and digital retail in the UK. And our perception is that the gap between the UK in terms of the speed of adoption of innovation by retailers is getting faster and faster, and the gap between us and the other economies is getting bigger. That doesn't mean we're ever going to be the biggest digital retail marketplace, because that's going to be North America and it's going to be Asia, but it makes us a real exciting ecosystem. And what I'm very conscious of, that actually we're creating something very valuable in the UK through the startup community and through the retailers, creating world-class digital retail experiences and world-class digital retail tech startups that then can export that IP and expertise on a global basis, either as brands or as technology providers. So it's a very exciting place to be. The new retail reality. You know, we talk about the kind of mobile, and we talk about shopping online and offline and in-store. The reality is those things are so blurred. One of the very interesting things that came out of the Mintel presentation was this 24/7 world that our, the 15 to 25-year-olds live within. And the reality of the way they will consume at home, in-store, online, in between, out and about, wherever they are, is turning into a 24/7 economy. When I was coming up on the train here this morning, I looked down my shirt and realised I had a bloody great stain right down the front of it. And I thought, going into Waterloo, there's a Thomas Pink there. If they've got any sense, there's somebody from Thomas Pink here, because they were on the list of companies that was going to be attending. If they've got any sense, they're going to be open. That's what I expect. And they were. So it was a great experience. Although I bought a nice white shirt, and so I don't look like a complete scruff. The reality is there are all of these technologies coming to marketplace, but what we're actually looking at is a retail reality that is entirely surrounds us as a consumer. Now that doesn't mean that it needs to be an interrupt economy. It doesn't mean that it needs to be in your face as the consumer, but it does mean that we as the retailers need to think far and wide about how we interact with our customers and consumers. That's really come out badly. It didn't look like anything like that when I was when I sent it through. So thinking about in terms of what's trending and what are we seeing? As I said, we're seeing a huge number of technology companies coming through to us. At the heart of everything is data. And data as a platform, data as an open API, data about me as a consumer buying online, in-store, my interactions with digital out-of-home advertising, my interactions with a TV online purchase. The data that we collect about consumers and the way that we use that is going to be integral to the propositions that we deliver. Privacy has significant implications within that, and I think we're going to see an increasing focus on that from a technology perspective. Payment is going to be disrupted. I'm still not entirely convinced about Apple Pay. James might talk differently about that. I do feel it will happen at some point in the future, but it's not quite there yet, but that's a major area that's going to be disrupted. Location, everything we're seeing has a location-based element to it. Whether it's an online proposition trying to create a physical element, or whether it's a physical retailer looking at location-based services, virtually every single startup that we're seeing has some kind of location element to it. And it's personal. You know, the rise of not just personalization in terms of recommendations, but taking out individualized propositions to individual consumers. And the convergence of all of those things coming together is, I think, where much of the retail innovation is going to come. Listening to the Google guys yesterday, the kind of three things that I took away from, it was the head of retail at Google, was collect all the data you can, think multiple devices, and innovate, 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 innovate. And I think that's going to be a key trend for retailers. Listening to Tesco, ASOS, and List yesterday, every single one of them talked about open data, sharing data, data as a platform, open APIs into our data, pulling data in, pushing data out, capturing a completely holistic view of the consumer and how they behave. I think it's really exciting that we've got this kind of forum going on today. Just going back to my earlier point about this kind of symbiotic relationship we need between the retailers and the brands and the startups. You guys are mutually dependent upon each other. I think it's really important within your relationships with startups that you understand what they want and what they need, because I think they're two different things. What they want when they're interacting with you is to help you to solve a really important problem that, as I said at the beginning, that they can scale and solve for a big market, and then they want to grow fast to make a big business. That's the essence of every single startup. What they actually need in their interactions is to, with you or with their partners, is actually to experiment and learn. As they're developing their product, as they're developing their routes to market, as they're developing their channels, as they're developing their pricing models, at every stage of that, they need to be learning and experimenting and iterating. And one of the key messages I would give to you when you're talking to the startups today is be incredibly honest about the feedback you give to them. You know, too many of the conversations we see between startups and retailers are, I think you might be really onto something there. That could be quite interesting. Maybe you come back and see us in 6 months. We'll see what we can do. What you're really thinking is that's a really shit idea. That problem is really not an issue for me. And to be honest, I'd never buy the technology from this company. We need some honest interactions. We see far too much of those conversations going on. And big brands and big retailers can suck the life out of a small startup. You are dependent upon them. They can bring great things to you as a business, but you need to treat them in the right way. Doesn't actually mean that they necessarily even need your business, but what they need to know is how it would work, how it wouldn't work, what information can they get, and they can learn from you. If you are going to do something with them, do it quickly, cut the red tape, pay them a decent amount, pay them quickly, and if it's going to fail, cut it off really fast and give them really good feedback. That is actually what startups really need at every stage of their business. If you're thinking about how you take this on to the next step in terms of interacting with startups and early stage technology companies, there are hundreds within probably a mile radius of this building here. Maybe a little bit further north and east is probably where the real hub of them is. There are incubators, there's Techstars, there's Forward Partners, there's True Start, there's Level 39, there's Iris Nursery, who have got really exciting and innovative and attractive, dynamic clusters of technology companies that really need to interact with guys like yourselves. And I think they are fundamental to the transformation of your businesses and your industry. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you very much for your time.
I think it's probably pretty obvious there wasn't a Thomas Pink on my journey. I've got the same cardie that was on the Iris Nursery photo.